Hi everyone, I'm Onion Yabor and this is Pro-Lit-Fic, here inspiring your creativity to a better life. And today I want to talk about value versus worth, knowing your worth and what that actually means. So the story today I want to share about is about a lump of gold that is found in the ground, right? Now, as most people know, gold is found in the ground and has to be mined out. Some might be able to find it, but this particular lump of gold was found during the gold rush. It was buried under a lot of dirt, and the person seeking it had to move a lot of earth and soil and dirt to find it. But eventually they found it, and it was this huge lump of gold, right? About a pound's worth of gold, right? Which at the time was extremely valuable, like worth several dozens of houses, and had all this intrinsic value in it for the population, right? And so, little by little, this gold was then taken back and it was refined, and about half a pound's worth of gold came from it, right? So we have half a pound of gold here, and this half pound of gold was at first used just to simply become a statue, right? And there's nothing more than a gram paperweight, and it was sold for about 10,000 US dollars, right? Now after a time there was a coup, and this 10,000 US dollar statue was then melted down, right? And the gold that was used in it was made to create a large cage for a lion that would be held by one of the sultans who had taken it over. And so this statue gold had now become a cage, right? And the sultan had needed it, so he paid a lot of money for it. And let's say about 20,000 USD, so twice as much, right? And then there came a time when the sultan died, he lost the lion, and then this cage was taken and it was melted down, and the gold from it was used as gild dust for several weapons. Actually, it was used to create gilded swords, 20 in fact, and 20 of these swords each. One of these swords was worth 10,000 each, right? And so we see that that from that 10,000 each of the swords with 20 of them, that's about 200,000 USD. And so from the first time that lump of gold was discovered being worth 10,000, now it was worth over 20 times its value. But one question I want to ask was, the worth of the gold ever changed throughout the process of its refinement? And this is something I think a lot of people need to look and see within themselves. What does it actually mean to have value versus to have worth? Oftentimes, we equate them as being the same thing, but I want to give some definition. So value, I think, is the impact and the level of perceived importance and influence for one's good that you can have in the world, in the material space, right? Versus your worth is that which is infinite and indescribably connected to your identity and your being, as well as the potential from which all value is derived. And so here we have worth, which is essentially potential value, but actualized and seen on a more spiritual level, on a creative level, versus value is that which is created and materialized in the actual world. So if we take those two understandings of it, we then see that what I feel I am worth is different than what I value and what others may value in me. And it's in this conflict that we see oftentimes we can be misaligned in not only how we choose to engage with our creativity and how we choose to show up for others, but also just understanding what is effectively the impact and the purpose I'm supposed to have here on earth. So before I go any further, I want to say, everyone, thank you for everyone who's made it this far. Like and subscribe if you heard anything that you like, as well as share this with anybody who might find this video helpful. It is word of contact like this that helps make the channel grow, and it makes a really big difference, so I really appreciate it. And again, appreciate you for your time. Now let's talk about how value, which is essentially how the world looks at you, right? So in the last story we talked about value, which is essentially the dollar amount, right? The gold after having been refined and changed from a lump of gold to a statue to a cage and then ultimately to a bunch of different swords, the gold was valued very differently. But its worth never really fundamentally changed. It was always just inherently just a lump of gold. And the value changed in finding different ways that worth could be applied. And so, just like this lump of gold, you are a lump of gold. You have your worth, which was given from before the time you were born. And part of life is learning how do we access and uncover this worth within ourselves, right? Oftentimes, people will see the worth in us before we'll see it in ourselves. But that doesn't change its reality or its existence. The idea is ultimately that our worth is an infinite part of who we are. And so we always are striving to stick it out and to uncover that potential and then bring it into value, which is essentially refinement, right? So this is where you take that raw lump of gold, which is found in the earth and has no real use, but then through refinement, by getting the impurities out of it and through a heat and a process, the gold is purified and then is used in different ways. But just because it's used in one way doesn't mean it loses the effective ability to do things in other ways, right? It just has been decided or placed into a role based off of what is most useful. And that's what we see with a lot of value in the world. A lot of times people will feel because people value them in a certain way that might somehow diminish their worth in another way, when in fact that potential still exists. It just has not been actualized because the refinement process for that actualization has not taken place. So let's say, for instance, I speak one language and I want to learn more languages so I can communicate and connect with more people. Now, fundamentally, the ability to speak language exists within me, right? That is of my worth as a human being. That's one of my potentials. But the only way that can bring any actual value into my life is if I go and I get the books and I start to study and I start to practice and I work on uncovering and refining that worth into an actual value. And it's only through the actualization of this value that I find the benefits of that skill or capacity. So there's a couple things I want you to derive from this. First off, recognizing that how I'm going to find value in the world and what people are going to pay for, what people are going to need is going to be very different than necessarily what I'm worth. But the capacity for it and the potential for it always exists. It must exist for it to come into fruition, to be in the world. And so our worth is in fact infinite. And that's really what I want to get to the point of this video, is that ultimately that before you were made, before you were born, your worth as an individual is infinite. It's never changed, can never be changed, and will never change. Even if we take that 1 pound of gold and turn it into a bird cage, or turn it into a paperweight, or turn it into a statue, or divide it up and turn it into a bunch of different swords, it's always that singular pound of gold. And we can divide it up and change it up and form it in different ways as much as we like to, but it ultimately doesn't change what is ultimately the driving value, the worth of that lump of gold. That's you, right? And so understanding that, if we can attach our sense of eternal worth to that and not necessarily to the temporary factors upon which we'll give value, we'll find deeper meaning in our lives, right? And I think especially it allows you to understand the cycles of creativity you're going to go through and the seasons that happens. There's going to be a time when your creativity will best be unmasked perhaps by drawing, but there's going to be times when you'll need to write books and narratives to do that, or perhaps it's going to be in learning a new language or in having different experiences. It's ultimately the same core source, that same worth that is you, but it's going to be refined and gain value and give value in a bunch of different ways. And being aware of that not only will help you build a deeper appreciation for your capacities and your ability to explore and share yourself with the world, but also to help others see and witness you for the creative and genius being that you are. And so That's what I want to talk about today on value versus worth and knowing the difference, because though your value may change and go up and down in the world, your worth is infinite, and that is something no one can ever take away. Now, if you like what you hear, please, again, like and subscribe to the channel. It helps it grow, and share it with as many people who you think would benefit from that. As well as if you're looking for opportunities to create if you're looking for opportunities to create and build a stronger career off your creativity and you need some coaching and some help, it's what I'm here for. I like to help people in expanding their creativity and building a life more in line with their vision. So please feel free to look it out at the link down below. And if you have any questions, feel free to place them in the comments. I love to answer and connect with my audience. And again, remember, your worth is infinite. And so never compromise it, because just like that lump of gold, we can put it... And remember, guys, no matter how much your value changes, never compromise your worth, because the universe never will. Your worth is infinite and will never change. I want to say stay happy, stay healthy, and remember, stay creative. Peace.